What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my builds guide and unit review of Heidr. I'll be going over the builds that can run on her and I'll also go over my Astra Tier List. So Heidr is an Astra Mythic unit who can boost up the resistance and also open up the 6th slot in the Astra season. And she does come with a preferred weapon, which does give her minus on special cooldown, and it does have the Spectrum Ruse effect built in. So if a rally assist is used, then she can basically inflict -4 debuff to all stats of the enemies and the guard status in the cardinal direction of the unit and the target ally. So that is really helpful because Gold Serpent is her preferred skill and that pretty much acts as a rally skill. And then for the combative part of her weapon, she's able to get the effects if she's within 2 spaces of an ally or if she initiates combat. So she's able to get +5 to all of these stats and also get true damage based on 15% of her attack stat. Unfortunately, this is not going to be added into the AoE specials unlike Aether, so AoE specials don't really have too much place on Heidr. And finally, she gets 30% damage reduction from foe's first attack. Being a green infantry mage, she does have access to a lot of the skills which infantry units have, and she can definitely make pretty good use out of them. And the reason why Heidr is actually a pretty good rally bot and a support unit is because of her assist, Gold Serpent. So this acts as a preferred rally skill and she's able to give herself and the target ally effects based on the turns that have passed. So from turn 1 onwards, you're going to be able to give them attack and speed buff, and the buff that you get is actually decided by the turns that have passed multiplied by 2. So this can go all the way up to 8 if you use this on turn 4, and turn 4 is the ideal turn where you can get all of the effects out of her assist. So from turn 2 onwards, you're able to get Canto 1, and that is really good for an infantry unit who doesn't really have access to Canto that easily. And then from turn 3 onwards, you're able to give the Treachery status to Heidr and the target ally. So Treachery status is basically what we have seen before on Winter Cordelia and Harmonic Roy. So it gives you true damage based on the total buffs that you have on your unit. So it is pretty efficient with the attack and speed buffs that she can give to herself and the target ally. And if you have got defense and resistance buff, then you can actually get a lot of true damage out of Treachery. It's definitely pretty dumb, the amount of true damage and the nuking potential it opens up. And speaking of nuking potential, from turn 4 onwards, she's going to be able to give the dual strike status to herself and the target ally. So dual strike status is something that we have seen on Winter Cordelia. It pretty much means that if you're adjacent to an ally who also has dual strike status, then you're able to get the Brave effect in the player phase. And keep in mind that after using Gold Serpent, Aether is also going to be getting another action. So she does not really exhaust her action by using Rally like many of the other Rally bots, and she also gets to act after it. So basically she can Rally, debuff the opponent with her preferred tome and the Spectrum Ruse that she has got, and then she can also give the status to herself and the target ally and then attack afterwards because she can get another action. So this is an amazing preferred skill because it provides a lot of support, a lot of status, and also makes Heidr very powerful along with the target ally. So this can help you a lot against many of the lower threat range teams where they have far safe tanks, and you can have the amount of time and turns to set up, because turn 4 is going to be the prime turn for Heidr so that you can get all of the status out of her and then pretty much go at it. Now obviously turn 3 is also pretty important because if you run Bolt Tower, then the Bolt Tower is going to be going off and you're not going to be able to get the dual strike which you get from turn 4 onwards. But still I feel like you can easily, wait like 4 turns against many of the lower threat range teams and easily get all of the status and then basically proceed to win from there after setting up. But unfortunately, because of the nature of this kind of skill, it means that if you're going to be facing a high threat range team like a Cav line, for example, or any kind of other Dancer Trap team, then you're not really going to be having enough turns to set up and get all of the effects out of Gold Serpent. And that is going to be one of the drawbacks of using Heidr. You pretty much have to, pray that you run into a lot of low threat range teams that can allow you the turns to set up and pretty much get everything out of Gold Serpent and hopefully kill their far safe tank and pretty much player phase their team from there onwards. And she can also be helpful in supporting enemy phase units and Omni tanks because of the Treachery status which you can give. So Treachery is going to be boosting up the damage output of your tanks by quite a lot because of the visible buffs that she can give. And if you run this with Elimine, then she can also give the defense and resistance buff So your units are going to be hitting for a lot of damage and one-shotting a lot of the opponents. So even though she's primarily going to be seeming to be useful in the player phase, she can also provide support to the enemy phase units because of the treachery status mainly, and that is going to be really helpful. And of course, she can just ruse the opponent and inflict the debuffs on them, which is going to be really helpful as long as the opponent does not have some kind of unity skill and legendary male Robin, because otherwise those debuffs are going to be coming to bite you back. So now I hope that you have a better understanding of how Heidr can function and what is her primary playstyle, and how with Gold Serpent she can be pretty much the best rally bot in the game, because not only she's going to be supporting but also getting another action out of it. And you also have Remote Sparrow, Magical Null Follow-Up, and Panic Smoke 4 in her base kit. Now Remote Sparrow is actually pretty good because she can basically get 50% damage reduction by stacking up the damage reduction from her weapon. So Remote Sparrow is an excellent player phase skill. And then she comes with Magical Null Follow-Up, which is basically the tier 4 version of Null Follow-Up for the magical units. And this can only be inherited to the infantry units, which are mages or dragons. This is not inheritable to the sword, lance, axe units, even if they have some kind of adaptive damage, which is definitely a bit unfortunate. So she's able to get -4 speed and resistance debuff on the foe with the skill. And the main selling point of the tier 4 null follow-up skills is that it reduces foes' non-special damage reduction skills by half. So this is something that we have seen before on Duo Liv all the way back, and then also on Young Soren. So this is pretty much helping you cut through the damage reduction of the opponent by half and not completely neutralizing it like you would if you were running Special Spiral. And this is actually helpful because even if like you're running Special Spiral, if you face an opponent who disables your specials, like Lucia for example, or if they've got a Scowl effect, then you're not really going to be able to trigger your special and pierce through their damage reduction completely. So Magical Null Follow-Up at least allows you to cut through their damage reduction by half, and they're still going to be getting some kind of damage reduction even if you cut it by half, but still, this is going to be making it a lot easier to kill those kinds of opponents. And this can definitely be helpful in the Astra season where you're going to be facing for Mortis quite a lot, who does have a lot of damage reduction. So this can at least help you pretty much cut through his damage reduction and do a lot more damage to him. So Magical Null Follow-Up can definitely be pretty helpful. And speaking of Magical Null Follow-Up, I definitely want to go over some of the options and some of the units which can definitely make good use out of this. Now, of course, Special Spiral 4 is going to be a really good option for a lot of mages that can pre-charge their specials or just have some kind of null guard effect so that they can trigger specials easily. But for the mages who don't really have that kind of luxury, and if they just want to get the null follow-up along with the damage reduction halving, then you can definitely run Magical Null Follow-Up. And the best users of this are going to be the units who have Desperation or Dive Bomb type of weapon, because they really appreciate the speed debuff on the opponent, at least in the case of Monica and Luin for example. And Brave Lysithea is also a really good user of Magical Null Follow-Up. So this can be run, and because of these special charges that she can get, she's always going to be triggering Glimmer even against an opponent with guard on her double attack, which is really good. And you can just run this on Monica as well because she does get the Desperation out of her Wind Genesis, and she does really need the null follow-up to bypass the follow-up negation effects, and the speed debuff definitely helps. And Luin is also there as an older unit, but still going strong here, as you can see, with the finish kill and Magical Null Follow-Up. Really appreciating it, because if you run Special Spiral 4, then you would pretty much need to outsource Null Follow-Up or run it as a Sacred Seal, which is not needed if you run Magical Null Follow-Up. And keep in mind that Magical Null Follow-Up actually stacks up multiplicatively with Young Soren's weapon. So Young Soren is a really unique case where he can basically cut through the damage reduction of the opponent by 75% without using any kind of specials. So he's a pretty good answer to like Lucia's in the Dark Season, for example, if you run him with a Bridal Cat to your team. So without even using any kind of specials, he's going to be able to do a lot of damage to those kinds of God Swords by cutting through their damage reduction. So Magical Null Follow-Up is a pretty good option on him, even though he's not the fastest, but this is still really good option. And keep in mind that even Dragon units can have access to this skill, so a lot of times they wouldn't want having Special Spiral 4, and many times they would want to have Magical Null Follow-Up because they are speedy dragons, like Ascended Young Tiki or Fallen Female Corrin. So in that case, Magical Null Follow-Up can definitely be a pretty good slot B skill so that they can cut through the damage reduction of the enemies. So overall, Magical Null Follow-Up can be a pretty nice option for many of the faster mages, but still a lot of these slower mages like Duo Asker for example or Arvel are just going to be wanting Special Spiral 4 so that they can completely pierce through the damage reduction, and they don't really care too much about having magical null follow-up, so there are not too many mages that would want to have this, but still some of them would really appreciate it, like I mentioned before. And overall, Heidr, in my opinion, is going to be functioning as a pretty amazing offensive unit and also as a pretty good support unit with the Gold Serpent rally assist that she has got, and she does have really good stats to go along with her weapon and the status that she can give to herself and the ally that she's going to be targeting. So she has got 45 base attack with a super boon, which is really great for nuking, and also 45 base speed, which is also really good. She actually ends up having more defense than a lot of the mages. Usually mages have like more resistance, but Heidr here has got 29 defense, which can definitely go really well in helping you survive the far safe tanks, especially the physical ones, and especially at higher investments. She's going to be having decent enough bulk to survive hits, especially with the damage reduction from her weapon and Remote Sparrow. So her stats are really good for initiating against many of the low threat range teams with her player phase prowess and by helping allies with her support. If you're going to be building up Heidr, then you can pretty much just give her Glimmer as the special because of her high attack stat, and also run bonus doubler Sacred Seal because she's able to provide herself with the attack and speed buff from Gold Serpent, and this can go all the way up to +8. So you can consistently get +8 attack and speed with bonus doubler as long as you don't face something that has got low attack speed. So bonus doubler could be a nice Sacred Seal option, especially when you're going to be initiating against many of the low threat range teams in Aether Raids offense, along with another ally who gets the buffs from all of her effects from Gold Serpent. So that's why bonus doubler can be pretty helpful instead of Blade Session, where you will need your allies to act beforehand. So it can work out, and you can also run her with Infantry Null Follow-Up as another status effect which she can provide to her allies. So like I said before, she can also function as a support unit for an Omni tank or tanks in general because she's able to provide them with the Treachery status, which just boosts their damage output. And you can run Infantry Null Follow-Up and give the Null Follow-Up status to an Omni tank, for example, and also support them even further. So this is an option which is easily available through Divine Codes. And then she can also be run on a Gale Force team because of her 2 actions basically that she can get from Gold Serpent. So you can just try and debuff the opponents with her Gold Serpent and then get another action. And after your, Wings of Mercy beacon or the main Gale Force initiator has gone in and fallen into the Wings of Mercy range, Heidr can just jump in and attack, and with the Remote Sparrow and her weapon, she's going to be able to survive the counter attacks, and with Time Pulse and Precharge Glimmer, she's definitely going to be able to take out a lot of threats. So for example, you can assume someone like Brave Trom who can get a lot of status out of Heidr, and he can be a great Gale Force initiator because of the special charges that he gets in his weapon, and he can also be a really great secondary Gale Force initiator as well. So he can be a really good option, for example, and can function well with the support that Heidr can provide. So Wings of Mercy is definitely going to be the option if you run her on a Gale Force team. If you're going to be investing even more into her, then I feel like an Oath Force skill is the perfect for her slot C because, like Winter Cordelia, she's able to have the dual strike status, but she doesn't really get the Orders buff. So teleporting is going to be able to just make a lot easier for you to set up and rally your allies and just move around, honestly. And we unfortunately don't have defense res Oath 4 yet in the game, as that would be the perfect Oath 4 skill for her because unfortunately the existing Oath 4 skills like Attack Speed Oath 4 and Attack Res Oath 4 are kind of redundant with Gold Serpent because you can already buff up the attack of Heidr by using that skill. So that's why they are a bit redundant, but whenever Defense Res Oath 4 comes out, that is going to be a great skill for her. And until then, if you do have the fodder, then with the Oath 4 skill and the teleportation, you can definitely have more flexibility and just more options so that you can teleport around and use Gold Serpent and basically initiate against a low threat range team with some player phase units. So that is definitely going to be an option. And then finally, if you do plus and merge her, then she can also function really well in Arena. And I would also suggest having the Oath 4 skill for Arena because movement is kind of restricted there, and Gold Serpent actually helps you a lot in Arena with the Canto 1 that you can get immediately on turn 2. So many times the matches are not going to be going on forever, and a lot of times teams are going to be rushing you down, but at the very least, getting Canto on turn 2 is going to be really helpful with Heidr and the debuffs that she can provide with Gold Serpent and the extra action. So Oath 4 is going to be really helpful in just, teleporting, and you can also run the finish guild so that you can have the attack and speed buff in the player phase and in the enemy phase, and get some true damage and some healing. Now going over my Astra tier list, I think that in tier 1 I can definitely put Plumeria because she's a mythic dancer and she can be used in any kind of team composition. And now that we have Firestorm Dance and also Guidance 4, her utility is a lot better now for something like arena usage or for summoner duels. So Plumeria is still really good and she's going to be getting a remix and refine in early next year. So that is even better, and a mythic dancer is always really good. But I just want to clarify that even though she's in tier 1, she's definitely nowhere near as good as Peony, who is just absolutely amazing before her remix and refine, and even better after her remix and refine, as she can provide debuff neutralization. And I hope that Plumeria can also get something similar and provide even more support. In tier 1, we of course also have the boogeyman of the Astra season, which is Elamine. So she is a very meta-defining unit, which I do think deserves the tier 1 spot, especially because she's also really useful in Aether Raids Chaos in shutting down a lot of effects and turn 1 effects basically. I think she has fallen off a bit because we have seen a lot more effects that go off on turn 1, like with Duo Asker with Legendary Robin. So a lot of times, Elamine users have to select basically the lane that they want to false start, and it is not going to be as easy as before, where we mainly had like Battle Katria as one of the main targets for Elamine. So I do think that that can be a bit annoying part as using Elamine, but still a good player who can prioritize the false start of the target that can help them tank the team better is going to be targeting that kind of lane and still getting things done with Elamine. And she's of course a big reason how we have the Aether Raids defense in the Anima season the way it is now. So you basically try and put a lot of turn 1 effects in different lanes and hope that the Elamine user picks the wrong one, and you're able to just overpower their tanks and their safe tanks. And Elamine definitely encourages a lot of safe tanking in the Astra season even still, and can support the Omni tanks as well. So I think she's really fantastic still. And I think Aether is also a tier 1 mythic because Future Focus, her Slotsy skill, is absolutely insane for ending the action of the opponents, and this is also really helpful in summoner duels depending on the map layout, and it can definitely be really helpful. And I've even seen her being used in Aether Raids defense in the Chaos season because she can just end the action of the enemies. So Aether is absolutely amazing because of the Future Focus, and she can also function as an AoE nuke in summoner duels if you want to. So that's also a role that she can do, and she can function with variety of teams because ending the action of the opponent is always going to be really helpful no matter what team you're going to be running. In tier 2, I'm pretty happy to put Eltina because her remix and refine are absolutely fantastic, and she's a lot better unit now, especially with Guidance 4 and Guard Bearing. And she's just absolutely insane in summoner duels with those two skills. So she can still function really well in Aether Raids offense as a vantage unit. You guys have seen me use her a lot in the Astra season if you have seen my Aether Raids videos, and she can definitely vantage sweep through a lot of the teams if they don't really have Hardy Bearing on the unit that can actually take out Eltina, because the damage reduction that she can get from the Dragon Wall that she has got now, she's able to survive a lot of hits even from the Hardy Bearing units. So she can actually survive them and still kill and just sweep through their team with Vantage. Of course, you will need to set this up with Spring Bernadetta, Winter Bernadetta, or Brave Lysithea, but I don't think that's the hardest thing to do. And she can also function really well in summoner duels. Absolutely insane unit and one of the best flyers that we have got there because she can be so bulky with the damage reduction stacking with Guard Bearing 4 and her Dragon Wall, and then Guidance 4 just providing so much mobility for her allies. And she can be a really threatening unit and also checkmate a lot of teams if they don't really have proper unit to take out Eltina. And she can frontline definitely really well against many of the melee threats as well. Twin Blades cutting through the damage reduction is definitely relevant, and so much more relevant now when we have got so much damage reduction in the meta game. And because of these special charges that she can get, she can also function as a Gale Force unit actually. So that's why I put her in tier 2, and I would also put Heidr in tier 2 because she's basically the best rally bot in the game because of Gold Serpent. So she can provide some amazing support, but like I said, her main drawback is going to be the fact that you have to wait until turn 4 to get all of the effects out of her, and Treachery and Dual Strike are going to be the main components for beating a lot of really tanky units. So you will need to set up for those turns, and that is only possible against low threat range teams, and you will not be having the time and the turns to set up against high threat range teams. But still, I feel like her support is really good, but at the same time I don't really feel like she's the most insane Astra Mythic, and clearly we do have the better Astra Mythics in tier 1 in my opinion, but still Heidr can definitely chill here in tier 2. And then I would also put Regin in tier 2. So Regin has definitely fallen off a bit because she can only kill everything in one hit with Aether Shell like she used to before, because units are a lot more bulky now and there's a lot more damage reduction. And then there's also Canto control, which is annoying with her fixed Canto, but still she can be useful with the Canto utility and also for breaking structures and for getting the pots in the end game. So the mobility is definitely a pretty good thing that she has got going, and Regin is still useful because of that, and also having Aether Shell, which does have adaptive damage, so that can definitely help you in many scenarios. And another mythic which I think has fallen off a bit is definitely Thor. So as you guys know, I'm a huge Thor fan, and I'm just a huge fan of Gale Forcing, so I use Thor a lot. And again, the thing is the same with Thor as it is with Regin. She just has a lot more trouble killing things now because of the bulk and the damage reduction they get. And there's also Hardy Fighter and Null follow-up opponents, which, you know, Thor can not really double, so that's a bit annoying. And a lot of bulky near safe tanks can pose as a threat and as an annoyance for Thor many times, but still she can be useful in a Gale Force teams. It's just that she's not as potent and as powerful as she used to be before. In the final tier, tier 4, I would put Naga. So she has gotten a remix and refined, so she can just function as a much better buff bot with the player phase, guaranteed follow-up attack, the +6 attack and speed buff, and also the effective against dragons that she can give to the allies. Not the most insane stuff, but still can be useful for taking down some of the annoying dragons that we have seen. And we definitely have seen quite a few dragons nowadays that can be really bulky, so the effective damage can always be helpful. And because of her flyer mobility, she can always function with aerobatics and function as a pretty good smite bot. And then in tier 4, I also have Ashera. So Ashera is also a buff bot, and she can be a really good cleanup unit because of the Blade Tome effect that she has got, and it is more like a proxy Blade Tome, so she's not really affected by the lull skills. But still, again, she's a buff bot, and buff bots are useful, but they're not most needed for most teams, pretty much, I would say. And Null Panic, I think, has lost a lot of its value with Legendary Male Robin, basically, because you actually want debuffs in many scenarios when you're going to be using Legendary Male Robin with your Omni tanks or with your tanks in general. So Null Panic is not the greatest effect at the moment, and there's also, you know, other ways of getting it. And Ashera being a buff bot also doesn't really help when her supportive capabilities are not really as great as the mythics above her. So I wouldn't really say that tier 4 mythics are all that bad. I still use them from time to time. It's just that they don't have the most useful niches. So hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more free videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Heidr against high threat range teams. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.